Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel back again after being busy assisting Hermes Psychopompus, transporting the souls of the dead down to the underworld. It's been back-breaking labor. There's been all kinds of necromantic bureaucracy and red tape to deal with, lots of pleas and business meetings with Hades and Persephone, but fortunately I managed to get enough time off to talk to you about one of the current transits, Mercury Conjunct Pluto, which is all about planting the seeds for the transformation of the mind. Now, Mercury in astrology is a symbol for this mind that is so claustrophobically close to us, and yet so invisible and intangible at the same time. Mercury is sometimes one of the hardest planets to see precisely because it is so close to us. If we look at the symbolism of how the planets interact with one another in the solar system, Mercury is very close to the sun. So if the sun is our shining central identity from which all else in life takes its energy, takes its vital force to manifest itself, then Mercury, the mind, is almost inseparable from it. It's very, very close. And likewise, with our own minds, it's this invisible ghost in the machine sitting inside our skulls. Indeed, to the ancient Celts, the head was believed to be the very receptacle of the soul, which is why they had all of these strange cults involving the severing of the heads of former prophets, like the myth of Bran from the Mabinogion. But the mind is this machine for which we process the world. We look at the world out there, we analyze it, we investigate it, we process all the little pieces of sensory data that we see, and we scry them for meaning and try and assimilate them inside ourselves as different pieces of data that can help facilitate our survival and our own acuity and intelligence. And intelligence is a vital survival mechanism in terms of understanding the world well enough to know how to navigate it safely, but also to one's own advantage, this thing that helps us develop skills that makes life more exciting and effective and interesting for us. But likewise, we also rely upon this ghost in the machine to look within, to analyze and invest our emotional life and experiences, our individual thoughts and cogitations, and to find a way of putting them back out there, to verbalize them so that we can express them to other people. We may have some great idea that is lurking within us, and we have to share it for others because it may be some project which we require other people to understand so we can come together as a group to make it happen. If we can't translate what is going on in here well enough to be understood by the people out there, then the idea may as well have not existed at all. So Mercury is very important in terms of translating everything back and forth in life and serving this wonderful interface. But because it is so close to us and so intangible, we can also forget how greatly the assumptions and the secret dogmas of the mind can manipulate and totally dominate and monopolize our experience of reality. If we have certain assumptions about ourselves and the rest of the world, we are always projecting them via our mind onto the world. So our minds have a sort of confirmation bias. We look for the things that we already know, and we try and find patterns that reinforce that pre-existent knowledge. But that means we can also use it to create these deliberate blind spots where we shield or censor things that disagree with the inner myth and narrative that we've created for ourselves. And we often see this in people who have very negative thought processes or very depressive temperaments, that they may have this inherent belief that life is always against them, that no good opportunities ever come their way, that everyone hates them, that everything they do is doomed to fail. And the more we think that is how life is treating us, the more our confirmation bias will look for those patterns in life that reaffirm our comprehension of that personal narrative. Whereas because we are so focused on those negatives that are dominating this victimized perception of ourselves, we can be totally blind to when good things are offered our way. You know, we don't see those opportunities because we don't want to, because they would create a cognitive dissonance. We may have someone who goes out of their way to be kind to us, to be compassionate, to be generous, and we just inherently assume it's going to be for negative or manipulative reasons due to our own expectations or past traumas, or may even not recognize what is happening at all. You know, we're on our knees crying, saying, please send me someone who can help me, please someone who can support me. And when someone actually does reach out and support us, we just see it as a hostile attack and we beat it away. So these hidden assumptions can really dominate our reality. And the reason why Mercury conjunct Pluto is so useful is that it really forces us into the pressure cooker of our minds. Pluto, when it is in aspect to any planet, intensifies our relationship with it. It makes us want to look deeper at the processes that a given planet contains. So Pluto conjunct Mercury makes us want to look more deeply into our minds, to look at our minds and see how they work and how they are influencing us on a day-to-day level. For instance, to use some rather simplistic examples, in the past, when I went through long periods of depression, if you looked inside my head at that time, there were certain thought processes or ideas that would just go on and on in my mind and repeat. And so many of them were just these negative perceptions of myself, this sense that I was not a worthwhile human being, that I was not worthy of love, and therefore any effort I made to acquire that love would always result in pain and humiliation and judgment and rejection. And as a consequence, that is largely what I attracted, because it's what I expected and it was the energy that I was putting out into the world. And therefore, unconsciously, I would have been analyzing and looking for those things that would reinforce that belief. Because the thing about the mind is that it likes to be right. It likes to say, yes, I predicted that. I did all the calculations and computations. I said it would all end horribly. And look, it has. There's this kind of sadistic, self-sadistic, masochistic delight in having proved one's own tragic view of life to be correct, because then you can then reinforce it to other people and say, look, I told you everything would go badly, and it has. Here's the evidence. It's not just in my head. It's a real world thing that's happening. But that's because everything in life begins as a thought, begins as an idea. We begin in that airy, wispy world of the mind. But over time, if we take the effort, those thoughts become manifested as behaviors, as habits, as patterns. For instance, many people who have that kind of tendency to have a bit of a persecution complex, where they assume everyone is going to betray them, reject them. I've known many who develop this very defensive behavior, where they are often very rude, very blunt, very abrasive, very prone to have outbursts or to give people verbal tongue lashings at any sign that they think they are being neglected in some way. There is this overreactive response, and naturally the people on the receiving end of that very unpleasant behavior say, well, I don't want to put up with this, and they disappear. And then that person with the persecution complex says, see, I told you I was right. I told you everyone leaves me, without really thinking about how it's that behavior to begin with that is creating that response. So when I was going through this very long period of depression, eventually I slowly started to challenge those thoughts and assumptions I had about myself. Instead of telling myself over and over again that I was unworthy of love, I started telling myself that I was worthy of love, that I did deserve to be loved, that I am a lovable, likable, charming human being. And at first that really hurt. I remember spending a whole day just walking around, just telling myself I am worthy of love over and over again. And it hurt so much because it was challenging that darkness within, that it reduced me to tears. It was painful. When you start putting light in an infected region of darkness, it will not feel pleasant, because it is this big force of bewildering change when we have gotten very comfy in our negative, dirty realm. So the only way we can really transform our minds and our perceptions of the world is by being willing to go against the grain of what we have previously believed. We have to be willing to depart from and let go of all of the negative thoughts and beliefs that are keeping us trapped where we are now. And this makes me think of one of the Buddha's metaphors for the process of attaining enlightenment. He made it very clear that attaining enlightenment is not a natural process that just happens effortlessly by itself in the right circumstances. It's something that requires constant effort. He compared it to swimming upstream. You have to go against that tide, that force that has been ingrained for many, many years, and you have to be that still small voice pushing against it, believing you have the strength and the willpower to turn the tide in the other direction. And so when we try and change our minds, when we start trying to think more positively or optimistically, or to change those narratives about ourselves so that they are more in keeping with the person who we actually want to be and where we want to get in life, we will feel ourselves swimming against the tide of the Styx or the wailing river of the Cacictus or those other rivers of fire and agony that surrounded the underworld. We will feel all of those demons within who have been trying to diminish us and keep us trapped in our own private hell rising up against us, with their chains, with their threats. And because that is very often how we remain in depressed states. Those demons within our minds, they bully us, they cajole us, they know how to hurt us, they know what our weak and vulnerable points are, and they will happily take that vulnerable information and exploit it over and over again, mercilessly, ad nauseum, until you are beaten to a bloody pulp. And that's why in meditation and the mind transformation of Buddhism, they so strongly recommend the virtue of detachment, the ability to look at something without taking it to be a fact and without it evoking an emotional response, just seeing it as a pure phenomena rising in and of itself rather than an accurate piece of data that has to be believed. Because ultimately, when we hear those negative voices in our heads, we don't have to believe them. We don't have to think they are true. They are ultimately just noise and strings of words that have been strung together. And if we are able to just look at them as a detached thing rather than something that has to be saying something true about ourselves that we therefore have to respond to, it begins to lose its meaning. It ends up just being chatter and static in the mind rather than actual information. And it makes me think of one of my favorite analogies for meditating and dealing with all of the agonies of the chattering monkey mind is to envisage yourself as being like a tree. And those negative thoughts are like all the crows and birds that land in the tree and they go rah, 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 rah. And if you stay still long enough and you don't pay much attention to them, eventually they fly away. Or even if they remain, their noise ceases to matter, because it is just that. It is just it is just white noise, the static from an ugly old television set or a tinnitus ringing in the ear, but it doesn't have to have any meaning within itself unless that's what we choose to invest it in. And we find that over a while, as we start to challenge those thoughts and we become more comfortable in the new thoughts we are replacing them with, that inner tide and pull gets stronger. The old dogma of what we believed ourselves to be gets replaced by the new one. And we suddenly find we start seeing the world in a different way. And as a result, the world responds differently to us. If the world sees that we are approaching it positively and with a friendliness and a trust that it will give us beautiful things, we often find that it will. You know, if you think about when you socialize with someone and they're all uptight and that really just constantly on their guard, that doesn't invite intimacy because it's always keeping danger out. Whereas you find the willingness to put warmth and trust into a situation often merits its return, provided it's obviously grounded and there's some kind of Saturnian boundary in place. So the extension of that is not just looking at how we can change our minds and perceptions, but also how we communicate to others, how those beliefs translate into the language and the choices of words that we use when we are with other people. So some of the more mundane associations of this aspect, it can be a great one for beginning psychotherapy or some kind of form of self-analysis, and we start to plant those seeds for the regeneration of a healthier mind. But it can also be times when those parts of our minds become more fixated, when we are more prone to obsessions. Pluto holds onto things very closely and lets go of them only over its dead body. So we may find we have secret plans, secret intentions during that period that we are afraid to articulate. Because if someone knows about a secret plan they have, they could potentially usurp it or contradict it in some way. Whereas if we keep it secret, what we keep secret cannot be destroyed because it is kept hidden away from prying eyes. So we may have these plots that we devise during this time that we allow to kind of fertilize and take shape in our minds before we actually take the time to effectuate them in the world. It's a bit like a predator being in wait. They wait for that perfect moment when they can strike and the creature they wish to destroy and consume comes close enough to them that they can kill them with the utmost efficacy. And Pluto teaches our minds to do the same. It says, lie in wait, get all your thoughts together, get all your plans in your mind nicely secured, so everything is all lined up before you reveal whatever it is that you want to reveal to the world. Because Mercury conjunct Pluto is often related to the desire to reveal secret parts of ourselves, and vice versa, times when we may get surprising messages from other people in which they reveal things that they have been long planning. Some of those can be pleasant, some of them can be very unpleasant. Maybe someone might initiate some kind of court case against us, or come to us with some kind of bad news, or reveal some suffering or pain that they've been going through themselves. It can definitely be an aspect in which there is power struggles relating to money and finance and commerce, and how all of those things can be used to control other people. Anyway, that's enough for now. This is my first video after returning from London, where I headed to get my prescription to start hormone therapy. I'm happy to say that I am on my 3rd day of estrogen and everything is feeling wonderful. I won't go into details about that now, but it also reinforces what I was saying about Mercury conjunct Pluto relating to the transformation of our mind and perspective, because even in those few short days, I'm already seeing how greatly estrogen is altering my perception of the world. If you have any stories you want to share, or any comments you want to make, please do. I always love hearing from you. To those who haven't heard from me in the past week, I do apologize. I've constantly been in transit like a stellar body myself, so I haven't had time just to sit and respond to you all, but rest assured, I will hopefully over the next few coming days, and all my love to you.